Hello, welcome to IDT Talks. I'm Anastasia Lavrina, and our special guest today is the former U.S. co-chair of the OSCE Minsk Group and a board member of the Caspian Policy Center, Richard Hoagland. Mr. Hoagland, hello and welcome to our program.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for finding the time to join IDT Talks. And my first question to you. On November 7th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken hosted Azerbaijan's Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov and Armenia's Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan to facilitate progress toward the lasting peace agreement. How do you see the role of the United States of America in peace-building process between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question, and I'm pleased to answer that. Secretary Blinken invited the foreign ministers to Washington to underscore U.S. support for the current peace effort. Now, the State Department was pleased to note that the November 7th meeting between Secretary Blinken and others with the foreign ministers was open, frank, and professional. We considered it a very positive meeting. But the real question is, why is Secretary Blinken continuing with these meetings? He sees a window of opportunity after 3 decades of damage, suffering, and death in the region. And the United States wants to help the people of the region move forward to true peace and long-standing prosperity.
Mr. Hoagland, does it mean that the United States are intended to initiate dialogue but not to enter into the process because the sides should solve all of the issues by themselves?
Well, of course, we can't do it alone. No, I think no outsider can do it alone. But it's important to note that we are working with our friends, especially our European friends and allies. And further, we're not acting against any other country, for example, like Russia. The United States remains fully engaged in this issue to support the people and the governments of the independent and sovereign nations of Armenia and Azerbaijan. It's also important to note that outside mediators like Secretary Blinken or the European Union leaders, they can't really finally solve the problem. They can help, but they can only do so much. It's really essential for the leaders of the 2 nations of Azerbaijan and Armenia to choose peace and prosperity after decades and decades of war and destruction, and to prepare their people for the inevitable compromises that will come. Because in international relations, there always have to be compromises to find lasting peace and prosperity.
Mr. Hoagland, at the meeting, there was no any single word about so-called status. And Secretary Blinken highlighted that the U.S. support territorial integrity of both countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Does it mean that the United States will not come back to this issue again?
That's the kind of question that I think only Secretary Blinken himself could answer. Because the thing is, that as a background mediator and a background facilitator, Secretary Blinken and the United States State Department, the White House, we want to do what we can. And we're willing to be flexible. If the leaders come up with new positive suggestions, oh, by all means, of course, we'll support that and help people move forward with it.
You had an experience of working as a U.S. co-chair of the Minsk Group OSCE. Do you support the statement that this organization is no longer a valuable institute to deal with the situation in our region?
Well, one thing that every diplomat, every ambassador knows is that you don't speak for someone else. Yes, I did have an excellent 1 year as the U.S. co-chair of the Minsk Group. I was profoundly moved by what I learned, what I saw. I traveled into the then occupied territories. I traveled into Nagorno-Karabakh. But at this point, we haven't seen the Minsk Group continuing in its old format. I would suggest that the OSCE and the leader of the Minsk Group, Ambassador Andrzej Kasperczyk, are probably behind the scenes saying, what is our next step? But I can't speak for them.
Mr. Hoagland, today, more than ever, the world needs to diversify its trade and transport routes and restructure its logistic flows. Azerbaijan is not only dealing with recovery of the liberated lands, but also dealing with opening of new possibilities to make the Middle Corridor project is possible and real. Share with us your opinion on this particular issue.
Oh, you've hit a very important topic there. Because of Russia's criminal war in Ukraine, because so many of the sanctions have blocked traditional routes of transportation and trade, what is called the Middle Corridor is a huge focus right now, and that is from China through Central Asia, across the Caspian, through Azerbaijan and onward to Europe. Azerbaijan is absolutely key in this. And further, to help Europe, I would really sincerely hope that something else that I worked on in the past, that the Trans-Caspian pipeline would finally be built. I know that Azerbaijan is working very hard with Turkmenistan. I know that Turkmenistan has a new generation leadership. I know that they are starting to change some of their old ways. So let's hope, with European help, of course, that the Trans-Caspian pipeline very soon is okayed and starts moving forward to help Europe.
I guess we have to speak also about economic prosperity for the region of the South Caucasus. Economic cooperation can become a good step forward in the peace-building process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Unblocking of transport communication in the region is among the top priorities topic on the discussion which is being held in Brussels and Moscow and even in Washington. How does the economy may help two sides to come closer?
You know, what we have generally seen around the world is that when there are peaceful relations among neighbors, trade and commerce increases. When trade and commerce increases, there's prosperity for the people. People's lives improve. And when people's lives improve, they more strongly support peace because they don't want to go back to what they remember, the horrible days of suffering and poverty. So I think that the people themselves have a real say in something like this.
Mr. Hoagland, and my final question to you. Last month, we know that Iran behaves very destructively towards Azerbaijan, provoking the situation. I'm sure that the United States of America are also worried about the behaviors of Iranian government. If the situation will become worse, are the United States ready to intervene in the process?
Oh, let's hope to God there are not new confrontations between Azerbaijan and Iran. That would just lead to more suffering. I know that behind the scenes, and you seldom see statements about this, and there aren't public announcements about it. Behind the scenes, the United States and Secretary Blinken and our president himself are paying very close attention to the very issues that you just mentioned. No one, again, has a crystal ball. You can't predict exactly what will happen and then how you will react to some theoretical situation. But I do know that the United States supports peace and prosperity in the region. And whatever flows from that is what we will pay closest attention to.
Mr. Hoagland, thank you so much for joining our IDT Talks today. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and thanks to you, and best of luck. Thank you.
Just to remind you, watched IDT Talks. I'm Anastasia Lavrin, and our special guest today was former U.S. co-chair of the OSCE Minsk Group and a board member of the Caspian Policy Center, Richard Hoagland. Stay with us and see you in the next edition.